Good morning, guys. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Right. Hi, guys. Welcome to HIW. We, HIW, as part of our 100 webinars mission, today we are conducting our 32nd webinar on opportunities of civil engineers. Okay, opportunities for civil engineering, right? We, HIW, are a finishing school concept who train engineers, that too specially the core segment engineers, mechanical, electrical, and civil, and then help them to get into the right career path. We give training, especially on industry-oriented training, which will help them in understanding the standards and all those which are related to the industry, and then help them to work better in the industry. Today, I would invite Mr. Neeraj Mehta, who has 6 years of experience as a structural engineer, and he has experience in design and analysis of especially the reinforced concrete, steel, timber structures. His experience also includes designing of commercial buildings, residential buildings for domestic and international projects. Hi, Neeraj. Over to you.
Hi, Bhavya. Hi, everyone. So, Bhavya, shall we start or shall we wait
Yes,
for a
yes,
couple of
yes,
minutes?
yes. We can start on. Students will get connected. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. So, thank you so much, Bhavya, for giving me this opportunity to guide students, because I can remember when I was a student, there was very less information available out there in market about how I can shape my career as a civil engineer. So let us just begin. So as we all know about civil engineering, what have we learned in our college, and what all subjects have we gone through? But the question remains: how do we implement all the subjects and all these details in the practical world? So I'm just going to share some details, some ideas about how different fields are, how are the practical application of this textbook that we go through, that we read, what are the different type of structures, not only structures, but for every field, what is the actual application in the industry. So let me just start this webinar, this presentation by a simple question that would be, what is civil engineering? So as we all know, civil engineering, as the word says, civil engineering is the branch of engineering that deals with the most basic needs of civilians. So as the name suggests, civil engineering, it is the closest field to all the civilians. For example, we build homes, we build road, we provide water supply, we irrigate lands, and then we connect people, we connect cities, we do infrastructure development, we do environmental protection, we do solid waste management. So all these are related very close to civil engineers. So that's what the main aspect of civil engineering is about. Now, let us see what are the different fields in civil engineering. So as we all are in our, we are entering third year, we are entering final year. So most of the time we have learned different subjects like theory of structures, geotechnical engineer, survey, environmental engineer, water resource engineering. So all this, how do we apply all this in the actual industrial practice? So these are some of the career opportunities that we have for a civil engineer. So based on our interest, we can go for structural engineering. Now, structural engineering is a branch of civil which is the most popular, because structural engineer, they have a lot of challenges, challenging equations, problem solutions, and all those things. Next would be bridge engineering. Then water resource engineering is there. Transportation engineering is there. Geotechnical engineering, offshore engineering, power plant and substation, environmental engineering, project management, remote sensing and climate science. So out of these, in our curriculum, in our bachelor's 4 years, we learn about structural engineering. We learn some things about bridge engineering. We learn about water resource, transportation, geotechnical. But there are other fields which are not there covered in our BTech curriculum. So for that, masters is, one of the option through which one can shape their career. So which would be offshore engineering is there, remote sensing is there, project management, environmental engineering. So these are some of the branches of civil engineering that would necessarily require a master to get their hands on, to get the expertise on. So let us just understand what are the different, details of this all engineering, and what is the actual industrial practice in all this different area. So talking about structural engineering, as we all know, we learn theory of structures, one, two, design of structures. So different universities have different nomenclatures for this subject, but more or less it is design of structures. So structural engineering is nothing but we design structures. So structures can be buildings, it can be power plants, it can be bridges. And structural engineers have to work with architects. They have to work with architects and construct building facilities like wastewater treatment, buildings, skyscrapers, apartment, bungalow, churches. So they have to coordinate with architects, they have to coordinate with MEP, that is mechanical, electrical, plumbing. So along with that, they do they do design bridges, tunnels, overpass, aqueduct, and all different structures out there, as we all can see. Then the major role is
Sorry to interrupt, Neeraj. Someone is not able to hear your voice. Shomshekar, what is the issue? Actually, we are able to hear the voice very properly. Could you please check your internet connection? Thank you.
yeah. So Somashekar, you can just type in there if you are able to hear us now. I think we can take it. Yeah. So this includes nothing but when we design, so what are the effects of wind on a structure? What are the effects of earthquake on a structure? So we have a structural engineer does nothing but a structural engineer ensures that whatever structure the person is designing, that is sufficiently strong to withstand these all anticipated loads. Now talking about structural engineering, let us just understand what are the tools that are being adopted in the market. Okay. So among our bachelor's life, these are very popular tools, which is ETABS and StatPro, which are actually used in the industry. Along with that, there is SAFE, which is used for foundation engineering. There is RCDC, which is used for the detailing and design of RCC elements. There is SAP 2000. There is Idea Statica. There is RAM connections. So these are just some of the tools which are popularly available, but in real world, there is a new tool which is being published in the market every alternate year. So the list goes never ending for a structural engineer. Now let us see what are the structures, uh, you know, what are the different structures that a structural engineer would design. So this is a snapshot from Mumbai International Airport, which was designed by SOM, which is a US firm, Skidmore, Merrill. Then structural engineer also has to design pre-engineered buildings. So this is nothing but the complete concept of IS 800 that we learn in our design of steel structure subject. But when we see all such structures, we see Burj Khalifa, we see international airport, we see stadium. But structural engineer not only designs all this mega projects, but also at the same time RCC bungalows and smaller structures are also a scope of a structural engineer's design. So let us understand about the bridge engineering. So bridge engineering is nothing but a further sub branch of structural engineering, wherein the primary focus is on bridge. The bridge engineer, as we all see in our day-to-day life, there are different type of bridges. There is a steel bridge, there is a RCC bridge, there is a pre-stressed bridge, there are arch bridges, there are cable stayed bridges, extra dose bridge, there is a box girder, there is a suspension bridge. So we see all this bridge in our day-to-day life as we go on. If we are on our roadways, then we have flyovers. If we are traveling through railways, then we have railway bridges. So talking about tools, these are very specific tools which are used by a bridge engineer, which are not very widely popular in the bachelor's life. So these are Midas Civil. Then again, StatPro is one of the tools. SAP 2000 is the same tool by CSI. StatPro is from Bentley. SAP is from CSI. Again, one more is from CSI, which is CSI Bridge. Then there is Sophistic. There is Lusas. Now, when we talk about learning these tools, it would be difficult for a bachelor's to learn this tool because these are all not very readily available in market. So, but there are some YouTube tutorials through which anyone can learn and understand what is Midas, what is CSI bridge, what is surface stage, what is LUSAS. So once the basic concept is clear, you can go through all the different tutorials on YouTube and understand these tools. Let us see some bridges. So this is the famous Howrah Bridge, which is a steel structure. Then this is a PSC box girder bridge. So basically, when we see a bridge engineer, so it is not necessary that a bridge engineer would only design mega structures like Howrah Bridge or maybe Golden Gate Bridge in California or Chenab River Bridge. So these are very iconic structure which comes in a span of 5 years, 10 years. Once one structure would come, but majorly as we see in our infrastructural development, whatever flyover we have in our cities. So these are the most widely designed bridges by bridge engineer. So these are box girder bridges. Then again, bridge engineer would also design the bridge for metro rails. So these are the widely available, widely popular bridges. Then this is just a snapshot of incremental PSC girder launching. So let us see what is there in the water resource engineering. Now, this is a field that we learn in our BTech life, but as we see in the industry, more insights has been achieved after one gets into their masters of water resource engineering. So water resource engineer would necessarily design a dam, then they would design storm water drainage, sanitary water drainage, then they would design irrigation system, they would do hydrological studies, they would do flood analysis. Now this might sound, not every civil engineer would have particular interest in all this field, but water resource engineers is a very important field of civil engineering. These are some tools which are used by water resource engineers. So it is HECRAS, HMS, ArcGIS, QGIS, InfoWorks, StormCAD, SewerCAD, and many more are there apart from this particular tool. So HECRAS, HMS, these are from US, ArcGIS, QGIS. So some of these softwares are freely available from the publisher that you can just check on their website. And also at the same time, some trainings and tutorials are available on the YouTube so that you can learn this software. So this is a typical irrigation channel which is designed by a water resource engineer. Now this is a city flood mapping. So as we see when it rains in our city, there is flooding here and there. So this is all the responsibility of a water resource engineer, how the flooding would be or how to channel this water through different stormwater sewers or sanitary sewers. And this is a typical urban drainage system where the sanitary sewer is there, catchment basin is there, and how it is connected to the main sanitary and main storm sewer. So this is what we also usually observe around our surroundings, the stormwater drain collection. So this is nothing but a design which is done by a water resource engineer. Let us talk about transportation engineer. So as the word says, transportation engineer, this basically deals with the traffic management, the transport of humans, civilians from one place to another place, and how to make it easy. So transportation engineer, they design highways, they design airport, air transportation, airport, and water transportation, coastal and ocean transportation, urban transportation. So some example projects that use transportation engineers include highway or freeway improvements, redesigning intersections, evaluating stop signs or traffic signals, traffic impact analysis, development citywide traffic plans. So as we see in our curriculum, we have learned this details. We have seen what is the traffic impact analysis, what should be the safe side distance, what should be the stopping side distance, and how much what is the capacity of road, how much vehicles it can withstand or it can take through. So this we have learned in our curriculum, but this is what you are able to see in your screen is the practical application of the transportation engineer. And when we talk about tools which are used by transportation engineer, so Civil 3D is one of the most popular tool, which is from Autodesk, Autodesk publisher. So Autodesk Civil 3D is one of the widely used application by a transportation engineer. Then there is Open Road, there is Geometry MX Roads, there is ArcGIS, there is MicroStation, there is Sumo, there is Corsim. So these are some of the tools which are used by transportation engineer. Now, as you can see, transportation engine transportation engineer not only deals with the roads, but they also have to plan the routing for metro in a city, metro rails, then railways, which connects different cities, then airways, waterways. So these are some of the sample images that a transportation engineer would be involved in. So this is a Kathiawara Cloverleaf Junction in Chennai, which is a very iconic roadway design to connect to the main freeway. Then airport runways, these are also designed by a transportation engineer. Highways are designed by transportation engineer. Then railway transport system, all this is a role of transportation engineer. Let us see what does a geotechnical engineer do. So geotechnical, as you can see, it involves subsurface exploration. So there are too many challenges because above the ground we can observe, we can analyze what is there, but below the ground one has to put some instrument and then understand what is there, what is available below the ground, what cavities are there, what is the soil formation, what is the geotechnical condition, what is the stratigraphy of the subsurface. So all this is taken care by geotechnical engineer. So geotechnical engineer, there are multiple substreams. The person can be a geotechnical or geological engineer. The person can be a hydrogeological engineer. So what do you mean by hydrogeological engineer? They provide design and analysis of ponds containing discarded oil sands material, water extraction from soil and sand, and steam injection into wells, and evaluate underground water layers trapped in rocks, which is aquifers. They also provide advice on environmental restoration. Other one would be reservoir geomechanics engineer, which is specifically for oil and gas operations. So as you know, oil and gas operations is a subsea, oil is extracted from the earth, wherein the depth of the exploration is, in thousands of meters. So that's where a geotechnical engineer comes into picture. So they analyze the strength of soils, drill hole stability, stress constraint, permeability of rock formations, and the degree of trapped hydrocarbons in underground reservoirs. Then a geomechanics engineer is also one of the marine operation field where geotechnical engineer would be working. So they analyze the relationship between physical structures and marine geology, an anchoring system, sediment erosion, slope stability, and foundations for offshore and coastal structures. So when we talk about geotechnical engineer, so there are not much tools available because geotechnical engineer is completely, a geotechnical engineer has to do the boring, collect the sample, and then run some tests. As we have learned in our bachelor's for geotechnical engineer, geotechnical experiments, we have done direct shear test and then triaxial test, wind shear test. So all these different tests are there to understand the uh, shear strength parameter and then water capabilities, the soil structure behavior. So all this is basically done in laboratories after collecting the samples. So these are some of the tools, out of which Plaxis is one of the most popular tool used by geotechnical engineers. And there is Geo5, Geo Studio. Now, when we just go through highways, we see some structures like this. So this is the slope stability for river. Then we see when a highway is being built through hill formation, and we see such type of structure with soil nailing. So these are all parts of a geotechnical engineer where they learn and understand the stratigraphy of the soil of the rock, so that to prevent it from falling on the vehicles. These are some of the. Then this is again one of the important aspects of geotechnical engineering, that is dynamic compaction for soil improvement. So when the soil conditions are not very favorable for construction, so at that time geotechnical engineer has to provide some solution for that. So this is one of that, wherein dynamic compaction is being conducted on site to improve the density of soil and to reduce the liquefaction properties of soil. Now let us talk about offshore engineering. So this is a field of engineering which is not included basically in the BTech curriculum. This is optional subject in many universities. But offshore engineering it basically, as the word says, offshore, it basically deals with structures and studies or engineering that is being conducted offshore, like in sea, in ocean. So offshore engineer basically, the role of offshore engineer is to design a barge, design of anchoring, design of mooring, design of offshore floating platform, design of offshore oil rigs, design of offshore wind turbines. So whatever structures and studies and engineering that is required for a structure which is there in ocean, in sea. So that's when the offshore engineer would come into picture. So all the subsea exploration, subsea anchoring, subsea mooring, and oil and rig exploration. So all this require an offshore engineer. So these are some of the tools which are used by offshore engineer. So there is a very famous and very widely used tool for an offshore engineer is SACS, which is by Bentley. Then there is ANSYS. I think most of the engineers would be aware about ANSYS. ANSYS is a finite element analysis tool, which is very popular for FEA analysis. Then there is Orcaflex, which is used for anchoring and mooring. Then there is STADPro. So STADPro is a widely popular structural analysis tool, which is used by an offshore engineer also. Then there is Moses, there is FlexCom, there is Deep Sea, then there is Aqua. So these are some of the tools. Tutorials are available by the manufacturer on YouTube. So if anyone is interested to learn or make their career in offshore engineering, they can probably take a master's course, and along with that, they can just shape their or increase their skills by learning this softwares through online tutorials. So this is a subsea structure where different type of platforms are there. There is a spar platform, there is a floating production system, there is a floating production and storage and offloading that is called as FPSO. There is a shuttle tank. So all these are all structures which are designed by an offshore structural engineer or an offshore engineer. So this also includes the structure which you can see above the sea and also the components which you are able to see below the seawater. So this is a typical structure. This looks like a ship, but it contains a lot more complexities because it has to be anchored, and then there are some exploration that are being carried out from the sea. So this is a typical this is a structure, or this offshore floating platform is from Shell company. This is the offshore oiling rig where they extract the oil, and all the engineering is being done by an offshore engineer. Let us try and understand how a civil engineer can play the role in power plants and substation. So as you can see, power plant is again one of the gaining field in the world, as we can say, because let us just see. There are different type of power plants. You can see thermal power plants, hydroelectricity plants, solar power plants, wind power plant, hydrogen power plant, nuclear power plant. Then there is substation design, transmission line tower design. So out of these, thermal power plants, nuclear power plants, and hydroelectricity plant, this involves a huge capital, and also at the same time, thermal power plant and thermal power plant and nuclear power plant are having some issues with the climate change from pollution perspective. That is why the world is entirely shifting towards cleaner energy, renewable energies. That is nothing but solar power plant is there, wind power plant is there, hydrogen power plant is there. So these are the field of renewable energies which the world is gradually shifting towards. Now, when we talk about this power plant, so these power plants are associated with substation and transmission line tower design. So let us see what are the different tools used in a power plant and substation design. So these tools are nothing but very widely popular. Again, STADPro is there. Then there is PLS CAD. Then there is PLS Tower. There is PLS Pole. There is Civil 3D. There is HACRAS. There is Plant 3D. So all these tools, there is different engineers are involved in the design of power plant, right from water resource engineer, environmental engineer, structural engineer, geotechnical engineer. So this particular field, it includes all the different engineers from civil engineering that require their technical skills for installation of power plant. Let us see some type of the power plant. So as we can see, this is the thermal power plant by NTPC. This is a typical wind farm plant. So a civil engineer would necessarily require to understand the geotechnical properties for foundation designing of all the wind farms. As you can see, this is a tall cantilever structure, which anticipates a lot of dynamic forces because of the turbine movement, which is ultimately transferred to the foundation, and it creates a lots of movement, biaxial movements are created. So to transfer that effectively in the soil, geotechnical engineer to understand the geotechnical properties of these details are required. And this is a solar PV plant. As you can see, the overall area required by a solar PV plant, that's a very huge area required. But this field of renewable energy is gaining a lot of attention over a period of time, as it is a cleaner energy, and the capital cost involved in the installation of solar plant is lesser as compared to the other power plants. And this is a substation. As we can see, as we usually commute through our daily routine, we see substations across, in our daily life. We see these structures. So these are all structures which are designed by a structural engineer with the help of inputs from an electrical engineer. So these are all lattice tower. So these are all designed using IS 800 and IS 801. There are different versions of IS 800, that is IS 801, 802, which helps us for designing such structures. Then we see we have transmission line. So again, these are all designed by a structural engineer, and to understand the transmission line routing, survey has to be carried out how the transmission line can be taken from one point of contact to other point of contact for the ultimate connection on the national grid. So that routing has to be done, that geotechnical properties has to be understood. And many a times you might have observed that this transmission line has to cross river, has to cross water body. So at that time, water resource engineer would be required to understand the flow of the channel, the flow of the river, what is the highest flood level, and all such details would be given by a water resource engineer. Then let us see what is there in environmental engineering. As we have studied about environmental engineering, this is a very, again, a very much required field of civil engineering, which will help in the cleaner energy. As we often hear in news about the air quality index of Delhi or air quality index of metro cities, that it is getting deteriorated over time. So that's when environmental engineer would come into picture. So what does an environmental engineer basically do? So environmental engineer would basically evaluate and assess all the projects that can impact the quality of air, soil, and water. And also they have to design mitigation plans that eliminate or set or offsets impacts to environmental resources. Then presenting project implementation option for avoiding impacts to species of concern, including endangered species. Helping to develop solutions to environmental issues like erosion control, water or air pollution. Working with districts, cities or countries to solve storm runoff pollution issues. Coordinating with agencies oversight at the local, state and federal level to most reasonable protect environmental resource and achieve project goals. So as we see, these are some of the roles of an environmental engineer, but they would also at the same time, as we see, there is a rapid increase in the industrialization. So we have pharmaceutical companies, we have process plant, then we have food industries. So all these industries have some certain effluent or certain outcome from their plants. So that outcome before the discharge in the natural stream, they have to treat the outcome, they have to treat the effluent and then drain it, then discharge in the natural stream. So before just discharging in the natural stream, they have to check the quality of the effluent, they have to treat it, and then they can discharge. So this is where environmental engineer would come into picture. Then there are water treatment plant. As we have seen, coagulation, sedimentation, aeration, all this we have learned in our BTech. So environmental engineer would necessarily help us to effectively design the plant. That this is again in metro cities, solid waste management is just increasing. This problem of solid waste management is increasing. So many of the metro cities have issued notice for all the apartments and societies that they have to dispose their solid waste in their own premises. So that's where how to dispose this solid waste in their premises and what are the different parameters that one should consider before doing this thing. That's where an environmental engineer would come into picture. Then, as we already mentioned, whatever effluents are being discharged from process industries, process plants, that effluents has to be treated. They have to check for the quality, and then only they are being allowed to put the effluents into the natural stream, so that the natural stream does not get polluted. So this is again one of the field where environmental engineer will come into picture. Now let us see what is there in project management, as some of you might not very much eager to learn the technicalities. They would more eager in increasing their managerial skills. So project management is a field for you in that case. So what a project management necessarily, what is included in the project management? So this includes project schedule and planning, budget control, project costing, allocating resources, preparing contracts, design cost estimation, and quality control. So project planning and scheduling is nothing but to meet the deadline of the project. Budget control, as we see, all of the projects are with some strict budgeting. So they have to see how they can control the project. Then they have to check the project costing if it is not overshooting as per the initial tender. Then they have to allocate resources. If more resources are required, then they can allocate more resources. Then they have to check, review, and prepare the contracts. Whatever contract, as we see, there are always new tenders for plants by NTPC, by ONGC, by IOCL. So along with that tender, there is a big contractual document that they circulate. So that's where a project management would come into picture. They have to learn and understand what are the technical requirement of the contract, what are the different things included in the contract, and how they can consider all that details in the project implementation. Then there is design cost estimation and quality control. So even quality control, quality assurance is a role of a project management. So what are the different tools which are used in the project management? So these are some listed tools. As I already mentioned, project management is not a completely technical field. That's why for a project management, Primavera is a software. Microsoft Project is there, which is also called as MSP. Microsoft Excel. Then Autodesk Navisworks is there. Autodesk Revit is there. BIM 360 is there, and Gantt Pro is there. So all this software, let me just give you some idea about Revit and Navisworks, because BIM 360, Revit, and Navisworks, these are very widely being adopted by industries. For example, let us just talk about Burj Khalifa. So while constructing Burj Khalifa, they have to check if any structural element is fouling with the electrical element or plumbing element or mechanical heat ventilation element. So all that clash detection is being done in Navisworks. And also at the same time, constructional stage analysis is also being carried out, like by what time what slab would be constructed on site, and how would be the next requirement on site. So all that has been taken care in Navisworks. Now Revit is a for Navisworks, the input comes also from Revit, where Revit is a 3D modeling tool where electrical, civil, structural, architecture, all of them would be preparing their own model, and all of these different models will go into Navisworks for clash detection, because it might so happen that someone like during the structural analysis, some column size are increased, but these are not allowed for from the architectural perspective. So that's when Autodesk Navisworks would come into picture, where project management or a project management engineer would be checking for clash detection. And Primavera and Microsoft projects are the tool where they overall where they manage the project overall, from project timeline identifying the critical path, and what are the number of submissions, what are the number of documents, what are the dependencies of the document, what are the inputs required for the document. All these things are done in Microsoft Projects and Primavera. There are n number of possibilities in this softwares when we talk about project management. So as per the industries, these are used in their particular way. Now, again, this is a field which is not very widely popular, but at the same time, as the entire engineering is shifting towards digital footprint, I would say. Now, it will reach certainly to a stage where the civil engineer would not be going on site with a theodolite or with a plane table survey to to plot the contours, to understand the topography. But there are advanced engineering tools like drone survey is there, then remote sensing is there. So these are the advanced engineering tools which are gaining attention over a period of time. So what a remote sensing engineer would necessarily do. And yes, for remote sensing, one will have to take a master's to understand these details. So let us see what does a remote sensing engineer would do. So they would monitor climate change by identifying changes in atmospheric pressure, temperature, etc. Then they would be predicting monsoon. They would help in disaster management. They would help to predict flood, drought, and other natural calamities to minimize the effect on civilians. Then they would record topography data, and also they would help to predict flood, as I already mentioned, tornado, hurricane, and other natural calamities to prevent human and property loss. So as we see, if there is a flood or hurricane uh, detected by Indian Meteorological Department in Bay of Bengal. So this is all predicted with the help of remote sensing, with the help of satellite data. What is the change in the pressure? What is the wind speed? And how that hurricane might enter the coastal region. And that's how IMD will issue warning signs in that region, and just to alert people that there is a hurricane coming. So these are all the place where remote sensing would come into picture. Then as we see Google Earth, the software Google Earth, which uses remote sensing very heavily to understand the difference in the topography. As in the recent features of the Google Earth, you can also check uh, for a particular site what was the site condition few years back. So these are all captured by remote sensing. So this is nothing but a land monitoring, like a satellite is there. So that satellite will capture the topography, they'll capture the, all the structures and all the things that are present on the surface of the earth, and capture that data, process it, and then send it back to the engineer who is requesting for this data. Then these are all the topographical images through satellite. Now developed countries like US, Canada, UK, they are having in US it is widely available that major cities, major states in US are having the topographical data stored in the cloud in the server. So every time when a new project is coming up, the civil engineer necessarily need not to go on site and carry out this data for initial investigations, but they can just fetch this detail through satellite and through remote sensor. Then, as I mentioned, to monitor the pressure and wind direction through satellite. So that's how Indian Meteorological Department will issue an alert in the coastal region about any tornadoes or upcoming tornadoes or any upcoming events. Now let us talk about government opportunities. So till now, we just understood what are the different field of civil engineer and how you can get your job in those fields, or what are the practical or industrial application of all those fields. Also, these fields, they require, I mean, these are required in private industries, private organization, as well as government organization. So let us talk about government opportunities. So for a civil engineer, these are some of the government opportunities, like state public work department is there, central public work department. So these are nothing but PWD departments. Then Indian engineering services there, IES, Indian railways is there. Then all the, if one wants to be in the city, then they can join the municipal corporation. The National Highway Authority of India is there. Airport Authority of India is there. Military engineering services are there. DRDO, RITES, pollution control boards. So as we can see, these are all specific government organizations that would require different field of engineering from civil. For example, pollution control boards would require an environmental engineering. National Highway Authority of India, Airport Authority of India would require transportation engineer. Then rights may require a geotechnical engineer or a structural engineer. PWD department generally requires, depending upon the openings, they require general civil engineer or structural engineer, water resource engineer, depending upon the public work department or the sub department that they are applying for. So these are some of the government opportunities. And the question is how to get into this organization. So all these or the government opportunities, they have openings which they publish on their website, in the news, in the newspaper, and there are forms, there are deadlines to the forms. So and also at the same time there are exams. These all government organizations have exams which is which is more related to general civil engineering. So that includes all the subjects from your curriculum. You have to prepare for all the subjects. You have to learn. You have to understand the previous question papers and all these details to get into this government opportunities, government organizations. Now, civil engineer, they also have a good demand in Maharatna and Navratna companies. Okay, so these are some of the companies, including the government or government organizations. These companies are the companies that pay really well, and also at the same time, the future is quite secure in this company. So, which are these companies? These are NTPC, National Thermal Power Corporation, Bharat Electronics, Engineers India, Bharat Heavy Electrical Limited, Coal India, then GAIL, then IOCL, then ONGC, then SAIL is there. Now the question remains, how do we get into these companies? So the answer is GATE. You have to appear for GATE, you have to get good rank, and then as per your rank, they have requirements and you can apply for these companies. Just to give you some more idea, to get into these companies, the GATE rank required is quite high. So one will have to be very confident on their GATE studies and GATE rank to apply for these companies. Like there are even chances that you might get IIT seat, but not one of the seat in this Navratna company. So it is there. I mean, GATE rank required for this company is quite high. So this Maharatna companies, these government opportunities, Navratna companies, these are all the opportunities in India. But if someone who is interested to go abroad, to go to US, to go to any of the overseas company, and they want to work from other countries, so what are the how they can reach to other countries? So let us see what are the overseas opportunities. So as civil engineers are highly demanded in the countries like United Arab Emirates, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UK, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Africa, Ireland. Now, specifically, I have mentioned these countries. Why would be the reason I have mentioned is these countries? The reason would be these are all countries where English is adopted and English is used. Now, how to make a career overseas? So, for all these listed countries, there are two approaches. Option one can be we get a master's from the respective countries. Let's say you want to work in UK, so you get a master's degree in UK or Australia or New Zealand, and then you can apply from job over there. Other option would be there are chartership, there are engineering licenses like PEng, CEng, ISTRUC-E, SciVem. So these are all the licenses that you can start working on. So it is not required that you work with a company or you have some experience. It is not always like that. You can just you can just visit the ICE website. You can just visit ICE website. You can see what are the requirement for PEng, CEng. So there are fellowship, there is a chartered membership, and there is a graduate membership. So you have to pay for this membership. You have to get enrolled, and while you are working, you can just keep on uploading your work progress. What are the achievements? Then what are your managerial skills? You can just keep on uploading these details. And once you have a chartered certification, or once you have a chartered certification, so you can start applying for different job in UK or New Zealand or Australia. So these are all. There is also a way where you can get these details on ICE, and jobs are also posted for overseas on ICE in these countries. For Middle East, they usually follow American standard. So if anyone is interested to go to Middle East, they have to learn and understand. For Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they have their Saudi building codes from structural perspective. At the same time, mostly they follow American codes. So you have to learn and understand what is present in American codes, what are the different clauses in American codes. Then UAE, which is nothing but Dubai, they are some of the companies, some of the projects, they accept American standards. Some of the projects, they accept UK standards. So you have to really get your hands on. If you are looking for overseas opportunities, our you can just figure out where you are interested to go. Then what is your field, which field you like to pursue your career in. So you can, depending on the countries, you can just randomly search on Google what are the codes accepted in that country, then what are the codes available online. So you can just read these codes, you can understand the difference, and then you can start applying for jobs. Now when I say these are all English speaking countries, one might think, why not USA? So when we see USA and Europe, these are having very specific requirements. For USA, the only way to work in USA, it was many years before that if anyone is working with a US based company, then they would get some opportunities through that company, where the company would send the engineer to US and then ultimately start working from there. But with the remote operation in the recent days, everything is available remotely. So if anyone is really interested to work in USA, they should go to USA, get a degree. It might be a 1 year course, it might be a master degree, and then appear for exams. So basically in US, you have to appear for exams. So the exams are fundamental engineering. Then you have to then once you're passing fundamental engineering, you can work for some years. After some years of experience, you can apply for professional engineering license for different states. Now these are all state-wise in USA. You can start preparing for this professional engineering, give the exam, qualify for some states, and you can ultimately start working in these states. Then after it, let's say if you're in structural field, after let's say 7 years, 8 years of professional engineering and your career, then you can apply for structural engineer license, which is the highest license for a structural engineer in US, and then ultimately pass the exam and then get a job. Now to get into Europe, Europe is a very specific requirement where all the European countries, for example, France, they follow French, Italy, they follow Italian, for Finland, they follow Finnish. So for all these countries, you have to learn or understand their language. For Germany, it is German. So if you learn this language, then you can give TOEFL. You can apply for chartered membership as I showed in the previous slide for PEng, CEng, iStruck E. So all these membership and exams are there. You can start appearing for these exams, prepare for these exams, then understand their country's language. So once you are having all these certifications, you can apply for a job even from India, because a lot of requirements are there in Europe, but the only constraint is language. So once you have a language proficiency, you have a TOEFL results, you have chartered membership, you can start applying from India as well. So these are some career opportunities overseas. So with this, I would like to ask all of you if you have any questions which I might be helpful to help answer, or you can just post your questions in the chat and we can answer one after another.
Yeah, guys, you can raise your hands for the queries. I'll unmute you. You can speak up, or if you have. There's a question from Dattas Kesava: How to get career in UK?
Right. So as I mentioned already, to get a career in UK do accept civil engineers from India, but they have certain criteria. For example, you have to clear such some exams as I just showed you in this slides. So you have to get a chartership license like PN, CN, and then if you're into structural field, so they have an exam called as I-study, a certification called as I-study. So if you clear these exams, if you get into these things, there are a very good chance that you can start applying for a job from India. And also at the same time, Ireland, Ireland is a country very close to UK, which accepts professionals from India. And from as many of the students are inclined towards structure, let me just give you a piece of advice here. If you are selecting the field of structural engineer, you are very much abided by the codes. If you are working in India, you have to work on IS codes, Indian Standard Codes. If you are working for a US project, you have to work on American standards. If you're working in Europe, you have to follow European standards. If you're following in Russia, so Russia have their own set of standards, and Indonesia have their own set of standards. So for a structural engineer, it is little bit difficult to jump from one country to another country, as the other country would necessarily demand their skills for the codes that are followed in that particular country. So that is one of the things for a structural engineer. For a water resource engineer, these things are quite global, and these tools, as I mentioned in the previous slide, HECRAS, HECHMS, InfoWorks, these tools are widely popular and other countries do accept these codes. So you can just go through these details and then you can start applying. But the easiest way for any civil engineer to work overseas would be getting a master's degree from that country and start applying for a job from that country. So there is one more question for a fresher engineer to get a job in foreign countries. So I would say it is a little bit difficult to get a job because, as I already mentioned, every country, especially the developed countries, they have their own set of standard and they have their own recognition of the universities. So when I say recognition, they usually accept students from universities from their own countries because they have, because they are not very sure about the curriculum or the teaching or, the subjects that are there in other countries, other universities. So they have this limitations where they do accept uh, students from their own countries. So coming to the
Next question we have, what are the opportunities for civil engineers in private sector in India?
right. So as we can see, I would just tell you there are a lot of companies in private sector. Okay, civil engineer in private sector, it is just you can hear about new company being formed every next month. So there are innumerable opportunities available in a private sector. You can start working for MNC. You can just select your field of interest. It can be structure, it can be geotech, it can be water resource, environmental. So there are multiple MNCs who work in this field and who require all this engineers. A new emerging field, or every metro cities require metro rail. So that is again one of the field where civil engineers are highly demanded. So there is one more question: which specialization in civil engineering offers maximum salary in India? So this is a very subjective question because depending on the project quantum, depending on the project size, depending on the requirement of engineer, the salary range is, the range of salary is quite wide. But I would say if one is excelling in their career, if they are having very clear basic concepts, so the opportunities, the salaries that you are offered for a civil engineer is quite comparable with other streams, other field of engineering.
Right. There's a question from Nehal Jain. Which countries are best for masters? Maybe we answered it, Nehal. Then we have, sir, how can I get a freshers civil engineering job? Every company wants experience, then they don't want to hire a fresher. Can I
Right,
get
right.
experience, sir?
Right. So this is a normal question in the I would say, freshers' mind that how can they get experience. So let me tell you one thing that not all company would require experience. There are companies, see, for example, there are companies which also accept internship as a program. So you can start applying. But at the same time, as we expect that we should be getting hired, company expects the candidate should be having very clear basic concept. So we should be very clear with our concept about our textbook knowledge. So I would suggest all of you to keep on brushing even after that subject is over. So once you decide to go for masters or once you decide to go for any jobs, at least 3 months before you should clear all your basic concepts, all of the things that are given in textbook, so that when you go for interviews, when you go for your industrial applications, you will be clear with these concepts. So basically what we see is that freshers, when they pass out from BTech, they forget the subjects from their second year. So it should not be the case. At least the basics should be clear, and you should be very clear about what job role you are applying for. Are you applying for a geotechnical job? Are you applying for a structural job? So you should be very clear with these things, and depending on the interest, you should be clear with the basics of the subject that you learn in engineering.
Right. There's a question from Ashutosh. I'm currently doing my MTech in second sem structural engineering from VIT Vellore. What can I do in order to grow fast in career?
Right. So, Ashutosh, as you are already into structural field from VIT Vellore, so I believe VIT Vellore is having a good campus placement also. And if not, if you're looking for some job off campus, so you can just select a field where you're interested. If you're interested in oil and gas, if you're interested in bridge engineering, if you're interested in high-rise buildings, if you're interested in structural dynamics or earthquakes, so you should just clear these basic concepts, and your CV, your resume should be quite strong about your master thesis, because as you are a fresher, so most of the interview questions that you'll be facing from your would be from your BTech and MTech. And what we have usually seen is that once we're into MTech, we tend to forget the basic concepts of BTech. So since you're into structural engineering, I would suggest you to just brush up your knowledge for RCC structure, be it a design of beam, design of column, design of foundation, design of slab, and structural steel design, design of bolt connection, then buckling, then compression member, tension member. You should be clear with this concept. You should be clear with IS 800. Not see, I would not expect you to learn and mug up everything, but you should be able to answer about the basics of structural engineering, which starts from second year, and for you, it is still the second semester of MTech. So all these details should be there. Basics should be clear with you. Since you're into structural engineering, you should be clear with the dynamics. You should be clear with the earthquake. At the same time, it is expected from you that the structural engineering that you have learned in your BTech, you're already aware about it. So that's what I would like to suggest you. You just figure out what field you want to go, you enhance some skill of tools, and then you start applying.
Right. Before we answer the next questions, guys, we have given our feedback link. Please give your feedback. It will be helpful for us to understand and help you with more webinars with respect to civil engineering, like what you're expecting from. Please do give the feedback, guys. And this continuing the question of Ashutosh, which software should I learn to get a job easily? Maybe.
Okay, so Ashutosh, I would suggest if you're interested, as we going back in as we go back in the slides, I had mentioned if you're interested in bridges, you should learn STAAD. You should get your hands, or you should get some idea about MIDAS, because these are software which are used in bridge engineering. If you're interested to go in RCC structures, you should totally learn ETABS and SAFE. SAFE is a tool which is used for foundation design, for mat foundation, raft foundation, and finite element analysis of foundation. So this is for RCC structure. If you are interested in a steel structure, you should totally go with STAAD Pro, and at the same time, you should be clear with the basics of connection design. So that's what you should be focusing on, depending on your area of interest.
Right. There's a question from Syed Adil. How to start your own company?
That totally depends on your experience, Sayed. So if you're having a good experience, let's say, I would not suggest to go for a fresher. I mean, if there is a fresher who would like to start their own company, because for starting their own company, you should have the market experience, you should have contacts, and you should have a very good confidence on yourself about the project that, or about the company, or about the domain in which you want to start your company. So I would suggest you can work for some years. If you're a fresher, you can work for some years, and then you can understand if you're really liking the job, liking that field, and then get your hands on, and then ultimately create some contacts, understand how the project is worked. Because if you're an engineer, and if you're, let's say, if you're a water resource engineer, so water resource engineer, you should be knowing how the tenders are being floated into market. How can you pitch for these tenders? Because if you start your own company, you will be doing everything right from winning a project to executing the project. So these are some of the tips you should be taking care before starting your own company.
Right. I hope we answered Adil's question. There's a question from Nehal Jain. Which is preferred more for higher studies, college or course?
So mostly I would suggest if you're going for higher studies, because as we see, the market competition is increasing tremendously, and every next engineer is having a master's degree with them. Along with the master's degree, let's say if there is an engineer, if there is a civil engineer who is having a master's degree in structural engineer, but also at the same time, after a few years, they do get a degree in MBA also. So this is a very competitive market. So going with courses will not necessarily help you, but you should totally focus in master's degree that will help you getting a secure and better job.
Right. There's a question from Afzal Ahmad. I'm third year student from MMDU. What to do can easily get job? Which software is best for AutoCAD? Okay.
Okay, so Afzal, AutoCAD is already a software, and I just forgot to mention that apart from all the tools that I have put in my slide, AutoCAD is the key tool which is applied everywhere in all the engineering. Okay, be it geotechnical, be it structural, be it water resource, be it transportation, everywhere AutoCAD is the primary tool which is used everywhere. So, Afzal, if you can just figure out what is your area of interest, you can learn some structural engineering tools like SCAD, ETABS, or if you're interested in water resource, you can learn some tools like HECRAS, HMS, and then Civil 3D. These are all tutorials are available for all these tools, and which will really help you to get your job in your desired interested field.
Right. There's a question from Gokul Rao. Sir, I want to start career as quantity surveyor. So what to do next? I'm pursuing my BTech final year.
So quantity surveyor, I would suggest that you just clear your concept of quantity and estimation. So once you get into the field or into actual industrial practice of quantity surveyor, you can just understand how the project is being carried out, or how a quantity surveyor plays a role in that project. Because ultimately, I would say quantity surveyor is again a very important field where you have to determine the exact quantity of things or elements that are going into a project. So once you get into a job, you can learn all these things in the curriculum itself, and there are some courses which are available for quantity surveyor also, and there are some exams for quantity surveyor. There are definitely a lot of opportunities in government organization for a quantity surveyor, so you can keep a track on all these things.
Right. So I'll just take 2 minutes of time to announce our next batch on civil engineering on March 28th, guys. So we do train on civil engineering for the civil engineer students to and help them to get into the companies with their interest of career profile. So we have batch starting on March 28th. I request you all to follow our website. That is www.hie.in, and also our Instagram page and our LinkedIn page, where you'll get our updates regarding the course details also. And you can please give your feedback. Upon filling up the feedback, you'll get your participation certificate of the webinar, guys. I think we answered all the questions, Neeraj.
There are actually a lot of questions about overseas opportunities.
Yes, because our last slide actually spoke about it. There's a question from Faiz Ahmad Khan. Sir, I'm an BE civil student. I want to pursue masters in architecture plans. What should I do?
Okay, so if you are, since you are into BE civil, and architecture is a different field. Architecture is a 5-year course Bachelor's of Civil Engineering is a 4-year course. So you will have to, study and understand a lot from the pioneers of architecture, or if you have a group of friends or any senior who can guide you about the basics of architecture. Because architecture, it is difficult to change your career from B civil to architecture, because an architecture would learn all these things in a span of 5 years about different subjects that they have. So you can just take some time out, learn about planning, about all the requirements of architecture. And the only way I would believe, the only way to get into an architectural field will be getting associated with one of the architects. It can be your friend, it can be a senior, it can be an architectural firm, to learn, understand how they design all this plan and what are the things that they take care in the architectural field. And once you start learning, you can gradually shift your career in the architectural field.
Right. There's a question from Ashutosh. Sir, how is the software Telka?
I think, Ashutosh, you're talking about Tekla. So Tekla is a
Oh,
software from Trimble. Tekla is a software from Trimble. And Tekla is it is basically a modeling software. Let's say in international, like in other countries, specifically in US. So they don't have all the buildings made up of RCC. They have a lot of buildings made up of structural steel. So Tekla is a modeling tool where you can model the structural steel with a with very precision, with all the bolt, nut, plates, and all those things. And your fabrication drawings can be directly taken out from Tekla, that can be given as an input to the fabricator. So Tekla
right.
is a modeling tool, but also at the same time, Tekla is working on a designing tool also. So sooner or later, you'll hear about it.
Right. There's a question from Asma. I have done MTech in transportation engineering. Recently, I heard domain experts are also working in machine learning. So, how can I get into ML through civil?
Machine learning, again, machine learning is a very upcoming field, very much required field, because for a transportation engineer, there is a lot of data that goes as an input for a transportation engineer. So machine learning is something which is, evolving in the field of civil engineering. So there are different codings, there are different, Python is a language which is used. Then there is one more language. There is Grasshopper. So there are different tools, and also I have seen a lot of engineers who learn machine learning, data science through YouTube videos, through books in their spare time. And at the same time, let me give you a very good piece of advice. Whichever field you select, you should always be associated with your seniors, with the pioneers of that field. You should put their questions. You should be in good terms with these friends, this professors, seniors, so that they can guide you ultimately. So you can, if you are there on LinkedIn, you can see for some engineers who have done machine learning, you can get in touch with them. Or there are some groups on LinkedIn where you can pose these questions, from where you can get better insights.
Okay, so we're done, I guess. Guys, any more questions? Okay. So thank you, Neeraj. Thank you for your time. It was great session, actually. Being an electrical engineer, I've understood like what civil engineering is all about. Thank you so much for your time. And it was really a great session. I hope all our participants had a great time in understanding like what are the different opportunities for career engineering, civil engineering people.
Right.
Right?
So as Bhavya has already posted these links, you can post your feedbacks, you can post your questions, and we will definitely get back to you to solve your queries.
Yes,
Because
yes. We can also put our next webinar, like what you want to have it on. So we could come back with the webinar that you're actually willing to listen.
right,
Yeah?
right. So depending on your queries, I would just suggest, because being into third year and final year, it is very difficult for an engineer in third year or final year to really understand what is the future aspect after 5 years, or what are they really interested in. So this is very much essential for our young engineers to understand what are the applications of all the different fields, what is project management, what is geotechnical engineer, and all these things. It is a mix and match of, you know, it is not that a power plant will only require a geotechnical engineer, but a power plant will require all the engineers. So there are multiple applications to what you study, what you learn, what your interest is. There is not a single industry where you can put your knowledge, your efforts, or your interest. your knowledge and efforts can go into different field of engineering. Now, power plant is a engineer power plant, solar power plant or wind farm. This is an electrical dominating field. But at the same time, to support all these structures, civil engineer would come into picture. So there are multiple applications to what your interests are. So you can just get in touch with us if you have any query. We can arrange one more webinar, just in half an hour webinar to address your queries next time.
Of course, we'll do that, Neeraj. And then just a quiet reminder, guys, that we have a batch starting on March 28th at HIW for civil engineers. Okay, especially the design course. You can get back to us if you have any queries. Our team will give you the complete information regarding the course curriculum. And that's all from us. Thank you so much for your valuable time. Thank you, Neeraj, again. And we HIW signing off, guys. Thank you.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, Bhavya.